Turn on, tune in, take off. A series of study support podcasts designed to launch you into university study. Episode 4, Preparing for Exams.
Hi, I'm Kathy Pink, an Education Advisor. In this podcast, I will be discussing approaches and techniques to help you revise for and write exams. To give yourself a good chance of doing your best on your exams, you'll want to have a well thought out plan for approaching your revision, so start early by making a revision timetable. Think about how much time you have between now and your exam. Don't forget to block out any time needed to complete coursework and other activities you need to do, including taking breaks from study. This is a good time to make sure you know when and where the exam is and to write it in your diary. Once you've decided on the main topics you will cover in your revision, divide your available time into small chunks and allocate the information over your available time. Aim to set a revision goal for each time slot. Plan to do deep learning, such as learning unfamiliar material, early on, and leave activities such as checking through your summarized notes and practicing writing answers until closer to the exam date. Before you can start to revise, you need to know what you are studying. It is unlikely you'll be able to reread all of your course information, so you'll need to be clear about what information will be important to focus your revision around. Exams will be based on the work you have covered during the year, so have a look at the main topics and subtopic headings from lecture notes and handouts for an overview of what has been covered. Aim to make condensed notes from all the information you've gathered and to identify the key points, including important examples and evidence for each topic. Pay close attention to particular questions or topics which have been emphasized during the course. And listen to anything your lecturer has told you about the scope of the exam. If pre-exam tutorials are offered, it could be helpful to attend. As you revise, keep summarizing your notes to make them easier to study from. You are working towards reducing your notes to master summary sheets. To do this, you could write a heading and come up with one word to represent each key point under that subject, and keywords to represent examples or evidence to back that up. Remember, it is important to make sure you understand the information when you do this. If it works better for you, write the information as a chart or a mind map. Make sure that your revision is effective by making it active. The least effective study approach is to read your notes over and over again. It is better to interact with the material and make it meaningful. Walk around the room, talk to yourself, ask yourself questions and answer them. Think up questions that combine two different topics or combine topics in an unusual way. Discuss the topic with a classmate and make up questions to ask one another. Remember, you need to be able to recall this information when you get into the exam, so practice this. For example, read your notes and then cover them and recall what you've just read. For each amount of time you spend reading information, try to spend the same amount of time on recalling and remembering it. If previous exams are available, it's a good idea to get hold of these to get an indication of the types of questions which have been asked in the past. You can also see how effective your revision techniques are by trying out these papers, to see if you'd be able to apply what you've learned to answering those questions. You might not want to take the time to complete the exam papers in full, but you could practice your exam writing technique. To practice writing an exam question, sketch out a rough outline in, for example, 10 minutes. Go back to your notes and see what you've missed. Perhaps practice writing 1 or 2 answers out in full against the clock. This will help iron out any difficulties you have with your exam technique before you get into the exam itself. If you do want to actually practice completing the old exam within the set time, don't forget to build this into your exam revision timetable. When you write an exam, timing is crucial. Whatever you do, it's very important to finish the exam, as it's easier to pass by answering all of the questions rather than answering only some of them very well. Speed in an exam is to do with having a clear plan as to how you intend to use your time. Your lecturer will probably have given you some idea of what to expect in terms of how the exam will be broken down, for example with multiple choice questions or essay questions. If you know in advance how many marks each of the questions will be worth, you'll be able to decide how to divide your time equally, and therefore how much time you'll allow yourself for each question. Don't forget to leave some time for jotting down outline answers and ideally checking answers at the end. When you start the exam, You may want to take a few seconds to glance over the whole paper. If you have a choice of questions, know what subjects you're looking for and perhaps even put a tick beside the ones that you know you'll want to answer. You might want to quickly jot down the time you need to move on to the next section or question in the margin of the paper. If you're running out of time or falling behind with the timings you've scheduled, draw your answer to a close as quickly as possible. Once you've picked your question and started answering it, stick with it as you won't have time to start another one. During the exam, make use of the techniques you have learned. Take the time to read each question slowly, underlining the key points. Make sure you really understand what the question is asking for before you start writing, as time is valuable and you will only get points for material that answers the question. Think about what areas of the course and topics the question relates to, and what ideas, terms, evidence, and examples from the course you can include in the answer. Then think about what a good order to discuss the points might be. In exams, essays need to be structured the same way as you would an assignment essay, with an introduction, a conclusion, and a well-structured argument in between. You may want to take a few minutes to jot your keyword summary down beside the question to ensure that you recall all the main points, and help you write your answers clearly and concisely. Cross the outline out when you have finished answering the question. Don't forget to write as legibly as possible and to number each question clearly. Don't panic during the exam, but if you do, take a deep breath and let it out slowly and try to mentally calm down. If you go blank, start quickly jotting down words and ideas onto a sheet of rough paper or on the back of the page to stimulate your ideas. If you don't know the answer to a question, leave enough space to write an answer in and go into something you can do. When you've answered questions you're more confident about, you may feel better able to come back and make an attempt. But remember to leave enough time to do this in. Do try to write something for all questions, as 2 half-answered questions will usually gain more marks than 1 completely answered question. Finally, here are some tips for the day of the exam. Make sure to get enough sleep the night before, as your brain will function much better. And don't try and take in new information on the morning of an exam day. Know where you're going for the exam and what time you have to be there. Plan out your transportation in advance and plan to arrive a bit early, as you don't want the stress of thinking you might be late. Perhaps wait somewhere nearby the exam room rather than outside the doors if discussing the exam will make you nervous. Definitely avoid anyone who's likely to make you feel stressed. Be sure to take some water, spare pens and pencils, and any other equipment you need. But remember, you'll not be able to take revision notes and books into the exam room. Make sure you dress so you'll be comfortable. You might want to wear something cool, for example, but take a jumper in case you get cold. Remember to breathe deep and remain calm. Panic will only make the situation worse, and by the time you arrive at the exam, you can only do the best that you can do. Some of the information in this podcast was based on the Good Study Guide produced by the Open University.